Hello. Brief introduction. The speech today is about Magawa, a rat in Cambodia that sniffs out landmines. Now, my actual speech starts in 5 seconds. Rats. Who likes rats? Well, as humans, we don't like them that much. Actually, we've vilified them for millennia, it seems, even though we are pretty sure that they might outlive us, they might survive us all. So we really have a poor relationship with rats. Mostly we've tried to kill them, and I know my dogs love trying to kill rats. But what if rats wanted to save us from getting killed? Wouldn't that be an interesting turn of events? I can only think of one rat that's ever been popular, and that's Ratatouille from the animated movie. Remember the cooking rat? I thought that was very cute, but a lot of people back then said that we shouldn't have a rat as a star of an animated movie because, well, he was a rat, even though he was a fictional rat. Now, here I am today to tell you about a rat that has actually saved many lives. Quick spoiler, unfortunately, Magawa, the award-winning landmine-sniffing rat in Cambodia, has recently passed away. Very peacefully, I'm told. He died a hero, a rat hero. Let me tell you why. You may never look at rats the same way again. Or at least this rat and his hero rat friends. First, let's talk about the sad reason of why Magawa's services are needed in the first place, of why there are landmines that need to be found in Cambodia. Magawa did all his work in Cambodia, the country in Southeast Asia that sadly has 40,000 amputees. That is more than any other country in the world. There are believed to still be 6 million landmines in the country. These landmines were placed during a long war in the 70s and the 80s by several Cambodian factions, including the notoriously brutal Khmer Rouge. They were mainly planted in rural areas, and of course, they were planted as a war tactic. And beyond the obvious terrible death and injury one would suffer from stepping on a landmine, there are also terrible consequences for the civilian population that have lasted for decades, well after the war. For instance, if you don't know where the landmines are, which we don't, it's very scary to be a farmer in a rural part of Cambodia and try to plant crops on your fields or even go to fetch water. Can you imagine how scary that would be? That you always have to fear for your life in the shape of a landmine that threatens your life every time you try to make a living or try to get water. It's really terrifying for the civilian population. This has led to food scarcity and malnutrition because people can't grow as much food as they would like because they're so afraid, and naturally so, of landmines being in the ground. And as you could imagine, Cambodia is a very poor country, so the healthcare is very subpar for people who suffer these traumatic and very devastating injuries due to landmines. There was a survey in Cambodia that found that 20% of the country's villages are still being affected by landmines today. That's a big, big number. There's another statistic from 2010 that says that 1/3 of landmine casualties, or those who have sadly passed away, are children, and almost all of them boys. It sure looks like girls are better at staying close to home. Of the survivors, 80% are males and they're over 15 years old. Now, these mines need to be removed in Cambodia one way or another for the country to move forward and for the population to not live in fear. So, as of 2019, there were 7 demining organizations working in Cambodia, most of them European. This is highly dangerous work and requires a lot of expertise and equipment. The cost of demining landmines in Cambodia is estimated at a staggering $40 million per year, and it will still take decades to remove them all. Now, let's talk about animals. Where do the animals come in? Well, in 2003, landmine detection dogs were started being used in Cambodia by a Norwegian nonprofit organization called the Norwegians People Aid, or NPA for short. These dogs are highly trained, and I'm sure they were super cute as well, but unfortunately, they were not prepared for the working conditions in Southeast Asia. Many of them were infected with ticks and mosquitoes, fleas, and many of them had to retire early or even sadly passed away. So the project was ultimately abandoned. But our resilient rats came to the rescue. They were light enough to be able to walk over a stretch of land without triggering the landmine. Because, of course, the problem with landmines is that if you step on it with any weight, it blows up and you'll either lose a limb or your life or suffer other devastating injuries. So these rats are light enough that they don't trigger it, but they can smell it and they will find the landmine in an area that's been carefully prepared. And then they alert their human handlers and they come in and do the actual demining, which is, as I said, a dangerous affair and is done with high-tech equipment. Back to Magawa. Magawa was a Gambian pouched rat, also known as the giant African rat. He was one of the so-called hero rats by a Belgian NGO called APOPO. They started doing demining work in Cambodia in 2014. So Magawa and his hero rat friends together found some 500 anti-personnel mines and more than 350 unexploded bombs. And among these heroes, Magawa was their superstar. Just by himself, he sniffed out more than 100 landmines, and his career lasted 5 years. He was even awarded a gold medal for his work. In pictures, he can be seen wearing his tiny gold medal around his neck, but I doubt that he wore the medal when he was out working, but who knows? Now, Magawa is certainly a tame animal, or was a tame animal, but rats haven't been domesticated for millennia like dogs have, so they're not technically humans' best friends. Magawa was sweet, but it was still a wild animal, and that's why he had to wear a little harness when he was sniffing out the mines, because otherwise he would just run off and never be seen again. He would just run off into the jungle. To make sure that didn't happen, he was equipped with a harness. Every time he found a landmine, I was told, he was rewarded with a piece of banana, which he seemed to enjoy very, very much. Quickly, what's Magawa's story? Where is he from? Well, You may have guessed he's originally from Africa. He was bred in Tanzania and trained at the local university there for a year before being sent to Cambodia to start his stellar career. He cleared more than 141,000 square meters of land. That is the equivalent of 20 football fields. That's a lot for a rat, don't you think? Even for a big rat. Remember, they've got short legs. Before we finish, everybody always wants to hear some statistics about the gold medalists. Usually they're human gold medalists, but here are some stats about the rat gold medalist. He weighed 1.2 kilos and was 70 centimeters long. He died peacefully at the age of 8 after having retired last year. He worked for a total of 5 years. He could search the area of a tennis court in 20 minutes. Just so you have a comparison, a human would take 4 days to do the same job. He didn't have very good eyesight, most rats don't, but he had incredible sense of smell, which he used to find the landmines. So, who says that dogs only are humans' best friends? Maybe that honor can be shared by both dogs and rats. Maybe today, tonight, we can all raise a glass or a cup of tea or whatever you'd like to Magawa and thank him for his efforts to make the world a better place, even though he may not have known about it. Thanks for listening.